It was the day that Chiamaka had been waiting for, the day of her surgery. The sun had barely risen, and already the air was filled with anticipation. Everyone in Dr. Felix's house was thinking of her, praying silently that everything would go well. Mamudo had woken up extra early, her heart heavy with both hope and nervousness. She wanted everything to be perfect for Chiamaka. "Mama, is it time already?" Chiamaka asked as she slowly sat up on the bed. Her voice had a mixture of excitement and fear. "Yes, my dear," Mamudo said softly, walking over to help her stand up. "Today is the day everything will change. You will see, God is with us, and Dr. Felix knows exactly what to do. You must be strong, okay?" Chiamaka smiled, her dimple deepening as she nodded. "I am ready, Mama. I trust Dr. Felix, and I trust God too." After they got dressed, Mamudo helped Chiamaka to brush her hair and get ready. They didn't talk much, but there was a sense of peace in the room. When they finished, they made their way to the dining room, where Mrs. Agnes, Kelvin, and Sophia were already waiting for them. The room felt different today. It was full of hopeful energy, like something wonderful was about to happen. "Good morning, Mamudo." "Good morning, Chiamaka," Sophia called out excitedly, running over to give Chiamaka a big hug. "Today is going to be so amazing. I can feel it." Chiamaka returned the hug with a big smile. "I hope so, Sophia. I really want to see the faces of all the wonderful people who had been so kind to me," she said softly. Mrs. Agnes approached with a tray of food. "I made your favorite breakfast, Chiamaka. You need to eat well before the surgery," she said kindly, placing the tray in front of Chiamaka. "Thank you, Ma," Chiamaka said, her voice filled with gratitude. She picked up her fork and began eating slowly, savoring each bite. She knew that this could be the last breakfast she would eat without being able to see the faces of those around her. Everyone watched her quietly, not wanting to rush her. They knew this was a big moment for Chiamaka, and they wanted her to feel calm and supported as possible. After breakfast, the door opened and Dr. Felix walked in. He was wearing his white coat, and his smile was reassuring as always. He walked over to Chiamaka and Mamudo, gently placing a hand on Chiamaka's shoulder. "Are we ready, Chiamaka?" Dr. Felix asked, his voice calm and kind. "Yes, Dr. Felix, I am ready," Chiamaka replied, her voice steady, though she felt a little nervous inside. Mamudo stood up and held Chiamaka's hand tightly. "God will see us through today," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "Dr. Felix, I know you will do everything possible to help my granddaughter." Dr. Felix nodded. "I will, Mamudo. I promise to take good care of her. The surgery will take a few hours, and I believe God will perfect everything." With that, Dr. Felix laid Chiamaka outside, where his driver was waiting to take them to the hospital. As they climbed into the car, Mamudo could feel her heart beating faster. She prayed silently, asking God to be with them and help Chiamaka's dream come true. The drive to the hospital was quiet. Chiamaka looked outside the window. Imagine what it would be like to see the world with her own eyes. Mamudo sat beside her, whispering a prayer in her heart. She knew this was a big day, and all she could do was hope and trust in God. When they arrived at the hospital, Dr. Felix took Chiamaka inside while Mamudo stayed in the waiting area. She sat down, her hands clasped together, her heart pounding. The waiting room was quiet, but inside her mind, Mamudo's thoughts were loud. She kept whispering a prayer for Chiamaka's safety and for the surgery to be successful. The hours seemed to drag on. Every minute felt like eternity. Mamudo tried to stay calm, but it was hard. She wondered how Chiamaka was doing and if the surgery was going well. She looked around the waiting room, but everything seemed boring through her worried eyes. All she could think about was her granddaughter. Finally, after what felt like days, Dr. Felix appeared. He walked towards Mamudo with a smile on his face. A smile that immediately made her heart feel lighter. "Dr. Felix, how did it go?" Mamudo asked, her voice trembling with both fear and hope. Dr. Felix nodded. "The surgery went well, Mamudo. Everything went as planned. We will have to wait a few days to see the full result, but for now, everything looks good," he said. His voice filled with optimism. Tears of relief filled Mamudo's eyes as she clasped her hands together. "Thank you, Dr. Felix. Thank you so much," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "You are welcome, Mamudo. Chiamaka is resting now, and we will keep her in the hospital for a few days to monitor her progress. Once she is awake, you can see her," Dr. Felix said kindly. Mamudo nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. She sat back down, waiting for the moment she could finally see her granddaughter and hold her in her arms. Later that day, Chiamaka slowly opened her eyes. She felt groggy from the anesthesia, and everything around her seemed hazy. But she could hear the soft beeping of machines and the gentle voice of Dr. Felix. "Chiamaka, can you hear me?" Dr. Felix asked, his voice soothing and calm. Chiamaka nodded slightly. "Yes, Dr. Felix," she whispered, her voice weak but steady. "Good. Everything went well, Chiamaka. You were very brave today. Now, we just have to wait a few days for your eyes to adjust," he said, his voice filled with hope. Chiamaka smiled faintly. "Thank you, Dr. Felix," she said softly, her heart filled with gratitude. Dr. Felix gently patted her shoulder. "Rest now, Chiamaka. Soon, you will see the world in all its beauty." As Chiamaka drifted back to sleep, Mamudo stood in the doorway, watching her with tears streaming down her face. She knew that they were on the brink of a miracle, and she prayed that soon Chiamaka would open her eyes to see the world full of color and light. The night passed slowly. Mamudo stayed by Chiamaka's side, watching her sleep peacefully. She couldn't wait for the moment when Chiamaka would wake up and see the world around her. Her heart was full of hope and gratitude for the chance they had been given. The next morning, Chiamaka woke up again. This time, she felt a little stronger. She could feel the warmth of the sunlight in her skin, and she smiled, knowing that soon she might be able to see it all. Mamudo smiled back at her. "How are you feeling, my daughter?" she asked gently. "I'm feeling better, Mama," Chiamaka replied, her voice soft but full of hope. They both knew that the journey wasn't over yet, but they also knew that they were on the step close to the miracle they had been praying for. Together, they waited, full of faith that soon Chiamaka's world would be filled with light. Days passed, and Chiamaka remained under the careful watch of Dr. Felix and the hospital staff. Mamudo stayed by her side every moment, hoping and praying for a miracle. It was finally the day they had all been waiting for. The day Chiamaka's bandage would be removed. The entire house was filled with anticipation, and even the hospital staff seemed excited. Dr. Felix entered the room, smiling warmly at Mamudo and Chiamaka. "Are you ready, Chiamaka?" he asked, his voice calm and full of encouragement. Chiamaka took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. "Yes, Dr. Felix, I am ready," she said softly. Mamudo squeezed her granddaughter's hand tightly, her eyes glistening with tears of hope. "God is with us, my dear," she whispered. "Everything will be fine." Dr. Felix nodded, carefully unwrapping the bandage around Chiamaka's eyes. The room fell silent as everyone waited in anticipation. When the last layer of the bandage was removed, Dr. Felix paused for a moment before asking, "Chiamaka, I want you to try and open your eyes slowly," he said, his voice steady and gentle. Chiamaka slowly opened her eyes, her heart pounding in her chest. At first, everything seemed blurry, and she could only see faint shadows. She blinked a few times, her eyes adjusting to the light in the room. Suddenly, she could see the shape of Mamudo's face, her kind eyes, her soft wrinkles, and her loving smile. Tears filled Chiamaka's eyes as she realized what was happening. "Mama, I can see you," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "I can see you, Mama." Mamudo let out a cry of joy, tears streaming down her face as she hugged Chiamaka tightly. "Oh, my dear Chiamaka, thank God. Thank you, Dr. Felix," she exclaimed, her voice filled with overwhelming gratitude. Dr. Felix smiled, his heart swelling with pride and happiness. "This is just the beginning, Chiamaka. Your sight will continue to improve over time, but I am so happy that you can see," he said, his voice full of warmth. Chiamaka looked around the room, her eyes still adjusting to the world around her. She could see the colors, the shapes, the faces. Everything was new and beautiful. She turned to Dr. Felix, her heart filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Dr. Felix," she said, her voice trembling. "Thank you for giving me the chance to see the world. I will never forget this act of kindness." Dr. Felix smiled and nodded. "You are most welcome, Chiamaka. You are a brave girl, and you deserve to see all the beauty in this world," he said. Soon after, Mrs. Agnes, Kelvin, and Sophia arrived at the hospital. They had been waiting for the news, and the joy in their faces was evident when they saw Chiamaka sitting up and looking around the room. "Chiamaka, you can see?" Sophia exclaimed, rushing over to hug her. "This is so amazing. I am so happy for you." Chiamaka hugged Sophia tightly. her eyes filling with tears of happiness. I can see, Sophia. I can see everything now, she said, her voice filled with wonder. Kelvin approached and smiled at Chiamaka. Welcome to the world of sight, Chiamaka. You are truly a brave girl, he said. Chiamaka looked at everyone in the room, the faces of people who had shown her so much love and kindness. Even when she couldn't see, she felt overwhelmed with gratitude and happiness. Mrs. Agnes approached Mamudo, hugging her warmly. This is a miracle, Mamudo. I am so happy for you and for Chiamaka, she said. Thank you, Mrs. Agnes, Mamudo replied, her voice choked with emotion. I can't thank you enough for all your support and kindness. Dr. Felix cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention. Now that Chiamaka can see, we need to take it easy for a while. Her eyes are still sensitive, and she will need to use her medications as instructed. But I am confident that she will continue to improve, he said. Chiamaka nodded, smiling brightly. I will follow all your instructions, Dr. Felix. I want to take good care of my eyes. That's nice of you, Dr. Felix said with a smile. Now, how about we going home and celebrate this wonderful moment? Everyone cheered in agreement, and soon they were on their way back to Dr. Felix's house. As they drove through the bustling streets of Abuja, Chiamaka stared out of the window, her eyes wide with wonder. Everywhere is so colorful, so vibrant. She could see the trees, the cars, the buildings, and the people. Grandma, see! The sky is so blue, Chiamaka said, her voice filled with shock. And the trees are so green. Everything is so beautiful. Mamudo smiled, her heart swelling with happiness. Yes, my daughter, the world is indeed a beautiful place. And now you can see it all. Chiamaka leaned back in her seat, her heart full of gratitude for the gift she had been given. She had always been full of life and happiness, even without her sight. But now, she felt like she had been given a second chance to truly experience the beauty of the world around her. And for that, she was forever grateful. One bright morning, before Dr. Felix left for the hospital, Mamudo walked up to him with a serious look on her face. She had been thinking about something for days and finally decided to talk to him about it. Dr. Felix, Mamudo began softly but firmly. Can I talk to you for a moment? Dr. Felix turned to her with a kind smile. Of course, Mamudo. Please go ahead. Mamudo took a deep breath, her eyes full of thankfulness. First, I want to thank you again for everything you have done for us, she said. You helped my granddaughter Chiamaka to regain her sight back. I can't thank you enough for this act of kindness. Dr. Felix shook his head, still smiling. Mamudo, there is no need to worry about it. Mamudo nodded, her voice shaking a little. I know the surgery and the medicine that helped Chiamaka to regain her sight must be very expensive, even though she's still getting better and needs medicine. I feel I should pay you back somehow. She paused for a moment, then added, I don't have much, but there is a small piece of land my late husband left for me in Nta village. Once we go back, I will sell it and give you the money. I know it will not be enough, but I want to help the little I can. Dr. Felix listened carefully, feeling even more respect for Mamudo. He smiled again and gently shook his head. Mamudo, your words means a lot to me, but you don't need to worry about the bills, he said softly. He continued, I have already taken care of everything. You see, when Chiamaka saved me from the kidnappers, she saved my life. If it wasn't her bravery, I wouldn't be standing here today. This is my way of thanking her for saving my life. Mamudo's eyes filled with tears. She didn't expect this kind of kindness. Dr. Felix, I don't even know what to say, she whispered, her voice shaking. You have done so much for us. May God bless you and your entire family. Dr. Felix smiled and gently patted Mamudo's shoulder. It was my pleasure, Mamudo. Chiamaka deserved all the happiness. And besides, my family and I have come to care for both of you. You are part of our family now. Mamudo wiped her tears, her heart full of thankfulness. You are a good man, Dr. Felix. She said, I pray that God will continue to bless you. I have never met anyone so kind. Dr. Felix smiled warmly. Thank you, Mamudo. Your prayers means a lot to me. Now, let's focus on helping Chiamaka get better. She has come a long way, and with your love, she will continue to improve. Mamudo nodded, a big smile spreading across her face. Yes, Dr. Felix, I will do my best for my granddaughter. She is a gift, and I will always be grateful for what you have done. Just then, Mrs. Agnes walked into the room, smiling when she saw Mamudo and Dr. Felix talking. Good morning, Mamudo. How are you doing? She asked kindly. Good morning, Mrs. Agnes. Mamudo replied warmly. I am doing well, thank you. I was just thanking Dr. Felix for all he has done for Chiamaka and I. Mrs. Agnes smiled and looked proudly at her husband. He really has a good heart. We are happy to have you both with us. It's been a blessing. Mamudo smiled, her eyes shining with thankfulness. Thank you, Mrs. Agnes. You and your family have been so kind to us. We will never forget your kindness. Mrs. Agnes walked over and gently hugged Mamudo. We are family now, Mamudo, and family takes care of each other. As the morning sun shone through the windows, filling the room with light, Mamudo felt a sense of peace. She looked at Dr. Felix and Mrs. Agnes, feeling grateful for the love they had shown her and Chiamaka. With people like Dr. Felix and his family, Mamudo knew they were not alone. They had found a new family, a place where they were loved and cared for. And that was more than she could ever have dreamed of. Few weeks later, and Chiamaka's eyes were getting better every day. She felt like she was in a dream, her heart full of joy. Everything around her became clearer, and her bright smile, with her cute dimples, made everyone happy. People couldn't help but notice how much she had changed. One Sunday afternoon, Dr. Felix decided to take his family and Chiamaka out for a fun day in the city. He wanted Chiamaka to see all the exciting places in Abuja with her new eyes. Mamudo joined them, and they all got into the car, ready for the day's adventure. As they drove through the bustling streets of Abuja, Chiamaka's eyes widened in wonder. She marveled at the tall buildings, the colorful billboards, and the lively crowds. She had never imagined a place like this, and everything seemed so magical. Her heart was racing with excitement as she took in all the sights and the sounds of the city. Look over there, Chiamaka. There is Aso Rock, Kelvin pointed out, his voice filled with excitement. Chiamaka turned her head to see the famous landmark, her eyes sparkling with shock. Wow, this is so big, she exclaimed. Thank you, Kelvin, for showing me all of this. Sophia, sitting next to her, smiled. And look, Chiamaka, there is Millennium Park. It's one of the biggest parks here. We can go there and have some fun if you like, she said cheerfully. Chiamaka nodded eagerly. I would love that, Sophia. Everything here is so amazing. I can't believe I am seeing all of this, she said, full of wonder. They spent hours at the park, enjoying the fresh air and the beautiful trees. Chiamaka couldn't stop looking at everything. She watched kids playing, birds flying, and families having picnics. She felt a kind of freedom she had never known before. After leaving the park, Dr. Felix took them to ShopRite, a large shopping mall. Chiamaka was surprised at how big it was, and she couldn't stop smiling as they walked through the aisle, picking snacks, clothes, and toys. Kelvin and Sophia made sure to explain everything to her, telling her stories about their past visits. Mamudo watched Chiamaka with tears of happiness in her eyes. She was so proud of her granddaughter and thankful to Dr. Felix and his family. It was a day she would never forget, seeing Chiamaka so happy. Later that evening, after they returned home and ate a nice dinner, Mamudo felt it was time to have an important talk. She gathered her courage and went to Dr. Felix and his wife, Agnes, who were sitting in the living room. Dr. Felix, Mrs. Agnes, Mamudo began gently. I want to thank you again for everything you have done for us. You gave my granddaughter a new life, and I will always be grateful. But I think it's time for us to go back to Nta village. The room became quiet. Chiamaka, who was sitting with Sophia and Kelvin, looked up in surprise. The happy smiles on everyone's faces disappeared, replacing by sadness. They had all grown so close to Mamudo and Chiamaka, and the thought of them leaving made everyone feel sad. Sophia spoke up, her voice shaking. Dad, please, can Chiamaka stay with us? She asked. Even Kelvin agrees with me. She can start school here and live with us. Please, Mamudo, let her stay. Kelvin nodded, his voice serious. Yes, Grandmaudo, Chiamaka is like a sister to us now. We want her to stay with us. Mamudo smiled, feeling touched by how much they loved Chiamaka. Chiamaka looked at Kelvin and Sophia, tears in her eyes. She said softly, if I stay, who will take care of my grandmother? She had been taking good care of me since I was a baby. Now that I can see, it's my turn to take care of her. It hurts me to leave, but I must go. I will miss you all so much. Sophia and Kelvin felt sad, understanding why Chiamaka had to leave, but not wanting her to go. Dr. Felix watched Chiamaka, feeling proud of her. He admired how wise she was and how much she loved her grandmother. He cleared his throat and said, Chiamaka, you are a very special girl. You always think of others before yourself. He then turned to Mamudo. Mamudo, I still want to help Chiamaka with her education. When you go back to Nta village, please find the best school for her. She deserves the best, and I want to see her succeed. Mamudo's eyes filled with tears, and her voice trembled. Dr. Felix, you are still helping us, even after everything you have already done. You are truly a blessing. Thank you so much. Dr. Felix smiled warmly. There is no need to thank me, Mamudo. Chiamaka is now a family. We want to see her do well in life. This is the least I can do. Chiamaka wiped her tears, feeling very grateful. She looked at Dr. Felix, Sophia, Kelvin, and Mrs. Agnes, and then said, "Thank you all. You have given me more than I could ever ask for. No matter where I am, I will always remember you all in my heart." Mrs. Agnes walked over and hugged Chiamaka tightly. "We will always be here for you, my dear. You are part of our family now." Sophia and Kelvin joined the hug, and Mamudo watched with a smile, feeling thankful and full of love for the family that had given them so much love. As they hugged, they knew that their bond would last forever, no matter where life took them. The day had finally come for Chiamaka and her grandmother, Mamudo, to return to Nta village. It was a bittersweet moment, filled with emotions that were hard to put into words. Dr. Felix had arranged for his driver to take them back home, and the whole family gathered to bid them farewell. The atmosphere was filled with warmth, tears, and love as they hugged one another. "Take care of yourself, Chiamaka," Mrs. Agnes said, her voice trembling with emotion as she pulled Chiamaka into a gentle hug. "Remember, you are always welcome here, and we are always here for you." Chiamaka nodded, her eyes glistening with tears. "Thank you so much, Mrs. Agnes. I will never forget all of you," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. She knew that Mrs. Agnes had become like a second mother to her, and living was harder than she imagined. Sophia and Kelvin rushed to embrace her, their eyes filled with sadness. "Please, write to us, Chiamaka," Sophia said, her voice almost breaking. "We will miss you so much." Kelvin added, "You are like our sister now. We will always be waiting to hear from you." Chiamaka smiled through her tears. "I will miss you both too," she said, hugging them tightly. "Thank you for being my friends. I promise to keep in touch." Mamudo also hugged Dr. Felix and his wife, her eyes filled with tears of gratitude. "God bless you all for everything you have done for us," she said, her voice shaky. "You are truly a blessing to us. I don't know how we can ever repay your kindness." Dr. Felix smiled warmly, his eyes glistening as well. "You owe us nothing, Mamudo," he said softly. "It has been our pleasure to help, and you both will always be part of our family. Please take care of each other, and know that our doors are always open for you." With that, Chiamaka and Mamudo climbed into the car, and the driver started the journey back to the village. As they drove away, Chiamaka looked back at the house, waving to the family she had grown to love. It was a mix of emotions, leaving behind her new family, and the comfort of their home was difficult. But returning to Nta, with her sight restored, was something she had dreamed about for so long. The journey back to Nta was different this time. Chiamaka's heart was full of excitement as she looked out of the window, seeing all the things she had missed during her first trip to Abuja. She marveled at the tall trees, the rolling hills, and the small village they passed along the way. Everything seemed so beautiful and magical, and she couldn't help but smile. "Look, Mama, it's so beautiful," Chiamaka said, pointing out a field filled with bright yellow flowers. Mamudo smiled and nodded, seeing the joy in her granddaughter's eyes. When they finally arrived in Intervillage, they were greeted with excitement. The villagers gathered around them, their faces filled with joy and curiosity. They had all heard about the miracle that had happened to Chiamaka, and they wanted to see it for themselves. There was a buzz of excitement in the air as they rushed to welcome them back. "Chiamaka, welcome back," one of the villagers called out, her voice filled with happiness. "Look at you now. You are even more beautiful than before." Another villager chimed in, "You see, it's always good to be good to people." Chiamaka's bravery and kindness had brought her blessings. Mamudo smiled proudly as she stood beside her granddaughter, who was now the center of everyone's admiration. "We thank God for everything," she said, her voice full of emotion, "and we are grateful to Dr. Felix and his family for helping us." Chiamaka beamed, her dimples showing, as she greeted everyone with warmth. It was so good to be back home, surrounded by the familiar faces of people she had grown up with. She could feel their love and happiness for her, and it made her heart swell with joy. Mamudo then began to distribute the goodies that Dr. Felix and his family had given to them when they visited ShopRite. The villagers were overjoyed as they received their gifts, and they expressed their gratitude with laughter and smiles. "Thank you, Mamudo. Thank you, Chiamaka," they called out as they received their share. The happiness and the excitement in the air were contagious, and everyone was in high spirits. As the sun began to set, Chiamaka and Mamudo returned to their home, their hearts full of love and appreciation for the wonderful family that had changed their life forever. Chiamaka knew that her journey was far from over, but she was ready for whatever the future held. She was determined to make the most of her education, just as Dr. Felix had promised to support her. She held Mamudo's hand as they walked into their house, feeling a sense of peace and belonging. No matter where life took her, she knew she would always have the love of her grandmother and the memories of her time in Abuja. And with that, she felt ready to face the world with hope and determination in her heart. Chiamaka had started school just as Dr. Felix had promised. Everything was going perfectly well for her and Mamudo. 10 years later, and Chiamaka had grown into a beautiful young lady. Her slender figure, graceful poise, and radiant smile made her stand out wherever she went. She was now studying at Nnamdi Azikiwe University, Unizik in Awka. She was thriving. In her second year, she was focused on her studies, determined to make her grandmother proud. Despite her busy schedule, Chiamaka always made time to visit Mamudo, who was now aging gradually. She would often remind herself, "I am all she has. I must be there for her and always make her proud." Mamudo's love and sacrifice had helped Chiamaka a lot, and she was determined to be the best she could be for the woman who had given her everything. One sunny afternoon, after finishing her lectures, Chiamaka was making her way out of the lecture hall. She was lost in her thoughts, thinking about her grandmother and how she would visit her soon. Suddenly, someone accidentally bumped into her, hitting her shoulder. Before she knew it, All her textbooks had fallen to the ground. "Oh, I'm so sorry," a voice said, and the person quickly bent down to help her pick the textbooks. Chiamaka knelt to gather her textbooks as well, and their eyes met. Her heart skipped a beat. It was a moment of complete surprise. The face in front of her was familiar, yet different. It was Kelvin, Dr. Felix's son, now a grown man. He was tall, with broad shoulders, and a kind, handsome face. His smile was just as she remembered, but there was something more mature and confident about him now. "Chiamaka," Kelvin called out, his eyes widened in recognition. "I can't believe it's you." Chiamaka blinked, her mouth dropping open in shock. "Kelvin, is this really you?" she asked, her voice full of disbelief. Kelvin grinned. "Yes, it's me. You have grown so much. I almost didn't recognize you. You are all grown up now." Chiamaka smiled, her dimples showing. "And look at you. You are so different. So much taller and more handsome," she said, feeling a warmth rise in her cheeks. They both laughed, the tension of surprise quickly melting into joy. Chiamaka could hardly believe her eyes. The last she had heard from Sophia, Kelvin was in the UK. She hadn't been in touch with him. But now, here he was, standing in front of her in Nigeria. Kelvin explained that he had returned to Nigeria to complete his degree. "I am really happy to see you, Chiamaka," Kelvin said, his eyes warm and genuine. "How have you been? How is Mamudo?" Chiamaka smiled brightly. "I have been doing great, and Mamudo is well. She's growing older, but she's still strong. She always talks about you and your family. I can't believe you are here." Kelvin nodded, his eyes sparkling. "I can't believe how much you have changed. You have grown into a beautiful lady," he said, looking at her with admiration. Chiamaka blushed and felt shy under his gaze. "Thank you, Kelvin. It's been a long time." Kelvin smiled and then asked, "How about we get some lunch and catch up?" Chiamaka agreed, and they walked to the school canteen together. As they walked, they couldn't stop talking, asking each other questions and laughing at old memories. It felt like no time had passed, like they were just continuing from where they left off years ago. At the canteen, they sat at a small table and ordered food. They spent the next hour talking about their lives, their experiences, and their hope for the future. Kelvin told her about his time in the UK and how he always wanted to come back to Nigeria to finish his studies. He missed his home and family, and now he was happy to be back. Chiamaka also shared her story, from the time they left Abuja to her life in the village and her studies at the university. She talked about how much she wanted to make her grandmother proud and how grateful she was to Dr. Felix and his family for giving her the chance to follow her dreams. "You have become an amazing person, Chiamaka," Kelvin said seriously. "I am so proud of you. I always knew you were strong, but seeing everything you have done is really wonderful." Chiamaka smiled, feeling thankful. "Thank you, Kelvin. It means a lot to hear that from you." As they finished their lunch and kept talking, it was clear that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in their friendship. They had both grown up and taking different paths, but now those paths had brought them back together. For Chiamaka, seeing Kelvin again felt like a reconnection with a special part of her past. It reminded her of how far she had come and of all the people who had helped her along the way. Chiamaka couldn't stop thinking about her surprise meeting with Kelvin. Every time she thought about it, she smiled. They had exchanged phone numbers after their meeting at the canteen, and Kelvin promised to stay in touch. He even said he would visit Nta village with her soon to see Mamudo again. In the following weeks, they started talking almost every day. After classes, they would chat for hours, sharing stories and talking about their dreams and plans for the future. Chiamaka really enjoyed their conversations. Kelvin was kind, smart, funny, and always made her feel comfortable. It felt like no time had passed since their childhood, and they became close friends again quickly. One sunny Saturday, Kelvin kept his promise and went with Chiamaka to visit Nta village. As they drove along the roads, Chiamaka pointed out things she remembered, and Kelvin listened with interest. It made her happy to see that he cared about her life, the village, and the people she loved. When they finally arrived, Mamudo was waiting for them in front of the small house. Her face lighted up when she saw them coming. She opened her arms wide, and Chiamaka ran to hug her tightly. "My dear Chiamaka, welcome home," Mamudo said, tears of happiness in her eyes. Then she looked at the Kelvin, who was smiling. "Kelvin, you have grown into a fine young man. It's so good to see you again," Mamudo said warmly, her voice shaking with joy. Kelvin bowed his head a little to show a respect. "It's an honor to see you again, Mamudo. I have missed you so much." Mamudo's face was full of happiness. She led them inside the house, where they sat and talked. Mamudo asked Kelvin about his family, and he told stories about his parents, Sophia, and their life in Abuja. He also told Mamudo how proud he was for Chiamaka and how she had grown into a brilliant young lady. Mamudo's eyes sparkled with pride as she listened to his words. Later, Chiamaka and Kelvin decided to take a walk around the village. As they walked, the villagers greeted them with smile and curiosity. The children followed them, laughing and asking Kelvin questions. He answered them playfully, making the children giggle. They walked past the stream where Chiamaka used to fetch water as a child, and she pointed it out to Kelvin. "I used to come here every morning with Mamudo. It was our daily routine," Chiamaka said. Kelvin looked at her with admiration. "You have come so far, Chiamaka. You have been through so much, but you never gave up. That is one of the things I admired most about you." Chiamaka blushed, feeling shy but happy to hear his kind words. "Thank you, Kelvin, but I couldn't have done it without the people who supported me, like you, your family, and my grandmother." As the sun began to set, they returned to Mamudo's house, where she had prepared a simple but delicious meal for them. They sat together, sharing stories, laughing, and enjoying the time together. It felt like a family gathering. After dinner, they sat outside, under the starry sky. Kelvin turned to Chiamaka and said, "I have something to tell you." Chiamaka looked at him. her heart suddenly beating faster. "What is it, Kelvin?" she asked quietly. Kelvin took a deep breath and looked into her eyes. "Chiamaka, I have realized something. You are not just a childhood friend to me. Over these past weeks, I have come to care about you deeply. I want to be more than just a friend." Chiamaka's eyes widened in surprise. Her heart skipped a beat. She had felt something growing between them, but she didn't think Kelvin felt the same way. Kelvin continued, "I know this might be sudden, and I don't want to pressure you, but I wanted you to know how I feel." Tears filled Chiamaka's eyes as she looked at him. She could see he was being honest, and her heart was full of emotions. She reached out and took his hand. "Kelvin, I feel the same way. You have always been special to me. I care about you too." Kelvin smiled, his face lighting up with joy. He gently squeezed her hand. "Thank you, Chiamaka. I promise to always be there for you. I want you in my life." They sat there quietly for a while, holding hands under the stars. In that moment, Chiamaka knew her life was changing again, and she was ready for it. She had faced many challenges, but now, with Kelvin by her side, she felt excited to welcome the future and all the new beginnings it will bring. After Kelvin told Chiamaka how he felt, everything seemed like a beautiful dream to her. They became even closer, supporting each other with their studies and talking about their hopes for the future. Kelvin made Chiamaka feel so happy, and she was thankful to have found someone who understood her journey so well. One weekend, Kelvin came to visit Chiamaka in Intervillage again. He wanted to spend time with Mama Udo and see more of Chiamaka's world. Chiamaka was excited for his visit and made sure everything was ready. When Kelvin arrived, Mama Udo welcomed him warmly. She had grown fond of Kelvin and was happy to see how much he cared for her granddaughter. That evening, they all sat together, eating the delicious meal Mama Udo had prepared. After dinner, they relaxed outside, enjoying the cool breeze. "Kelvin, how is your family?" Mama Udo asked kindly. Kelvin smiled. "They are doing well, Mama Udo. My father is still busy with work, and Sophia is doing great. She will graduate soon and can't wait to visit you and Chiamaka again." Mama Udo smiled, her eyes sparkling. "That's good to hear. Your family had been so kind to us, and we are always thankful for everything they have done." Kelvin looked serious and said, "Mama Udo, I want you to know that I truly care about Chiamaka. She is very important to me, and I will always be there for her." Chiamaka's heart filled with happiness when she heard Kelvin's words. She looked at him with love and felt so grateful for him. Mama Udo smiled warmly and held Kelvin's hand. "You are a good young man, Kelvin. I can see how much you care for Chiamaka, and that makes me happy. All I want is for her to live a happy life." Kelvin nodded. "I promise to do everything I can to make sure Chiamaka is happy." Tears filled Mama Udo's eyes, and she smiled. "Thank you, Kelvin. I trust you." Chiamaka couldn't hold back her own tears. She hugged her grandmother tightly and said, "Mama, thank you for always believing in me. I love you so much." Mama Udo patted her back gently. "My dear Chiamaka, you are my heart. I love you too. And I am so proud of the young lady you have become. You will achieve great things. I know it. Kelvin watched them, feeling lucky to be part of their lives. He promised himself that he would always protect and support them. As they sat under the mango tree, Kelvin turned to Chiamaka and asked, "Chiamaka, have you thought about what to do after school?" Chiamaka smiled and nodded. "Yes, I want to be a teacher. I want to help children learn, just like Dr. Felix helped me. Education changed my life, and I want to share that gift with others." Kelvin smiled, impressed. "That's so amazing, Chiamaka. You will be a great teacher. You are kind and patient." Chiamaka blushed, feeling happy at his words. "Thank you, Kelvin. What about you? What do you want to do?" Kelvin leaned back and thought for a moment. "I want to work in agriculture. I believe our farmlands have a lot of potentials, and I want to help farmers improve their crops and make better life for themselves. I want to make a difference like my father does." Chiamaka nodded proudly. "I know you will make a difference, Kelvin." They sat quietly for a while, thinking about their future. Then, Kelvin turned to Chiamaka, his face serious. "Chiamaka, no matter what happens, I want you to know that I am always here for you. Wherever life takes us, I will be by your side." Chiamaka looked at him, her heart full of emotion. She gently squeezed his hand and said, "And I will always be here for you, Kelvin. Together, we can make our dreams come true." Kelvin smiled, his eyes full of love. He leaned forward and gently kissed her on the forehead. Under the shade of mango tree, they both knew they had found something special, something worth holding on to forever. When Kelvin went back home, he told his family about Chiamaka. He talked about how much he admired her strength and determination. His parents were happy to hear about his feelings for her and remembered how kind Mamudo had been during their visit to Abuja. Sophia, who had been listening, felt a bit left out. "I wish I could have been there to meet Chiamaka and see Mamudo," she said sadly. "I want to be part of the fun too." Kelvin smiled and reassured her. "Don't worry, Sophia. You will meet them soon. We can plan a trip together and you will love it. Mamudo is so wonderful, and Chiamaka is even more special." Sophia's face brightened at the thought, and she couldn't wait to finally meet the girl who had captured his brother's heart. As the years passed, Chiamaka and Kelvin's love grew into a beautiful relationship. They supported each other through university, celebrating their success and facing challenges together. Chiamaka graduated with honors and feeling proud as she received her diploma. The ceremony was full of joy, and when she saw Mamudo, she was smiling happily. It made her heart even more proud. After all the hard times they had been through, Mamudo never thought she would see her granddaughter graduated. That day, Mamudo's smile lighted up the whole room, and her heart was full of thanks for all the opportunities that had come to Chiamaka. Kelvin, too, achieved a significant milestone. He completed his master's degree with a flying colors, proving to be a dedicated and hardworking student. He felt immense pride in his accomplishments, but it was Chiamaka's success that brought him the most joy. They celebrated together, their families cheering them on, and it felt as if the world was at their feet. However, not everyone was entirely supportive. Mrs. Agnes, Kelvin's mother, expressed her concern to her husband. "I worry about their relationship," she confided. "They have grown up like siblings. Seeing them together as lovers feels a bit strange to me." Dr. Felix listened attentively, understanding her concerns. "I know it might seem unusual, but their love is genuine. We must support our son and wish him happiness. They have a strong bond that goes beyond friendship." Sophia, on the other hand, was overjoyed. She had always seen Chiamaka as a sister and was thrilled to welcome her into their family officially. She often encouraged Kelvin and Chiamaka, planning a little celebrations and gatherings to bring everyone together. "You two are perfect for each other," she would say, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "I can't wait for the day I will officially call Chiamaka my sister-in-law." Mamudo shared in the joy, feeling like the luckiest grandmother ever. After the loss of Chiamaka's parents, she had faced many dark days, but now she felt like life had returned. "I never thought I would live to see such blessings," she said, with tears of happiness in her eyes. "Chiamaka, you have made me so proud." With their family's support, Chiamaka and Kelvin decided to take the next big step in their lives. They planned a beautiful wedding that showed their love and the journey they had taken together. Friends and family gathered to celebrate them, and the day was filled with laughter and happiness. On the day of their wedding, Chiamaka looked beautiful in her white dress, her heart full of excitement. As she walked down the aisle, she saw the love in Kelvin's eyes, and all her worries disappeared. Kelvin stood waiting for her with a proud smile that made her heart soar. Their vows was filled with promises of love and care for each other. "I promise to support you, to cherish you, and to always be by your side," Chiamaka said with a steady but emotional voice. "I promise to love you unconditionally, to help you achieve your dreams, and to make you smile every day," Kelvin replied, his eyes shining with love. After exchanging rings, they were pronounced husband and wife. The crowd cheered, celebrating the love that had grown from childhood friends to life partners. They danced happily, surrounded by family and friends. Chiamaka felt like all her dreams had come true. She looked at Mamudo, who was dancing happily, and at Kelvin, who held her close. She knew that she had finally found true happiness. In the years that followed, Chiamaka and Kelvin built a life full of love, laughter, and support for each other. They faced challenges together, celebrated each other's successes, and never forget the importance of family. With the love of Mamudo and the support of Dr. Felix and Mrs. Agnes, they thrived in both their careers and personal lives. Chiamaka and Kelvin lived happily ever after, grateful for the journey that had brought them together. Their love story was one of hope, strength, and the beautiful bond of friendship turned into lifetime love. The lesson from this story is that adversity can lead to personal growth and a new opportunities. Chiamaka's journey from blindness to regaining her sight symbolizes hope and resilience, showing that challenges can be overcome with determination and support from loved ones. The story also emphasizes the importance of family, community, and kindness, as they played a crucial role in helping individuals realize their potential. Ultimately, it teaches us to value the relationships we build and to support one another, as love and compassion can create a brighter future for everyone. Thank you for watching this amazing story. Please kindly like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. See you on the next video.